He married her for revenge, not love. A cold, calculated deal to humiliate his ex-wife at her anniversary party. But what no one expected, least of all him, was that the woman society mocked would become the one person to change his life forever. Was this just another scheme? Or could a marriage built on lies transform into the most unexpected love story of all? Before we dive into this powerful journey of betrayal, pride, and redemption, tell me, from where in the world are you watching this video? Drop it in the comments below, because I want to know who's joining me for this story. Julian Hartley never expected silence to echo so loudly in a room full of everything he once thought mattered. His penthouse was immaculate, glass walls overlooking London's skyline, curated art on every wall, furniture selected by designers who barely looked him in the eye. And yet, standing there in his tailored charcoal suit, Julian couldn't remember the last time this space felt like home. On the table before him lay an envelope. Cream paper. Gold trim. The seal already cracked from how many times he'd opened and closed it, hoping the words would change. Charlotte Kensington Hartley invites you to her wedding anniversary. His ex-wife. A woman who knew exactly how to break him without raising her voice. She had sent that invitation like a bullet wrapped in silk. A reminder that she had moved on. That she had won. He could still hear her words the night she walked out. You don't know how to love, Julian. You only know how to control. And maybe she was right. He didn't grow up in warmth. He grew up in negotiation. In posturing. The son of a steel magnate who taught him that feelings were weaknesses, and women were either trophies or liabilities. Charlotte had been both. So when she left, she didn't just take the marriage, she took his reputation. She smeared him through every dinner party, every charity event, every whispered brunch table in Chelsea. Stories about how Julian just couldn't handle a real woman made their rounds with quiet laughter and smug nods. And now, she wanted to celebrate her new husband. A public declaration. Another event Julian wasn't supposed to survive. But he wasn't going to survive it. He was going to own it. That was where Tamara Price came in. She was everything Charlotte was not. A bold, plus-sized black woman from East London who ran Sweet Success, a modest but fiercely beloved bakery known for its lavender honey rolls and caramel sea salt loaves. No posh accent. No family inheritance. Just grit, talent, and unapologetic authenticity. Julian had first seen her in a magazine feature about London's rising culinary stars. She wasn't smiling for the camera. She was commanding it. He'd done his research. Sweet Success was profitable, but stuck. Bank loans denied. Investors afraid of her brand. Expansion impossible. Not because of product, but because of perception. And that's where their interests aligned. It was supposed to be a business proposal. Julian would invest £2.5 million to help Tamara open 3 new locations, provide access to his PR and distribution networks, and position Sweet Success as the new face of culinary innovation. In return, Tamara would stand beside him, as his wife. A marriage in name only. For 12 months. For Charlotte to choke on her judgment. For society to question everything they thought they knew. For Tamara to get the breakthrough she deserved. And for Julian to, once and for all, regain control of his narrative. He hadn't expected Tamara to show up to the meeting wearing a mustard-yellow dress that hugged every curve with pride. He hadn't expected her to stare him down, listen in silence, and then say, "You want to use me to get back at your ex. But I don't do meek. And I don't do fake smiles. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it my way. No shrinking, no apologies." That's when Julian knew. This wasn't a favor. This was a reckoning. She'd walked out that day with a calm fire in her eyes, and left him with a contract that reversed every term of control he'd written. She wasn't the woman he'd picked to make Charlotte jealous. She was the woman who made Julian question if this plan was revenge or redemption in disguise. And that was only the beginning. The wedding was small, quick, painless on paper. A Monday morning at the Kensington Town Hall. Tamara wore a cream-colored wrap dress she bought years ago for when life finally gets good. Julian wore a suit that cost more than her first bakery oven. No flowers. No audience. Just Kenya, Tamara's younger sister and forever protector, rolling her eyes as she signed the witness form and whispered, "If you hurt her, I'll burn this whole city down." Julian didn't laugh. He nodded, as if he knew she meant every word. After the ink dried and the rings were exchanged, simple bands, no diamonds, no declarations, they took the obligatory photo under the iron archway outside. Tamara didn't smile. She didn't fake anything. Julian respected her for that. But what started as a performance soon began to shift under the pressure of proximity. Julian had cleared a guest room for her in his penthouse. The air between them remained civil, cold even, but polite. Until the night Tamara made soup from scratch when she noticed he hadn't eaten. "You can't starve yourself just to feel in control," she'd said casually, ladling the broth into a bowl and sliding it across the marble counter. He blinked. No one had ever fed him without expectation. And then there were the press events. They'd practiced their smiles. Their backstories. How they met at a charity dinner. How they bonded over business and a shared love of bad coffee. But somewhere between the practiced answers and the forced laughter, they began to discover little truths. She noticed how he always glanced toward the exits, as if still waiting to run. He noticed the way she touched her left earlobe when she was holding something back. Julian found himself drawn to the warmth she left behind when she left a room. Tamara found herself irritated that she noticed his cologne. They weren't supposed to like each other. And yet, one night, after a PR gala, Tamara stood in the hallway of his penthouse, pulling off her earrings, rubbing the tension from her shoulders. "You don't belong in that world," Julian said softly behind her. "They don't deserve you." Tamara turned. Her voice didn't rise, but her words sliced through the distance. "Don't confuse admiration with apology. I know exactly who I am, and I've spent a lifetime building armor thick enough to walk into rooms like that without flinching." Julian didn't answer. Not with words. But the look in his eyes lingered long after they both disappeared into their separate rooms. Then came the night of Charlotte's anniversary party. The moment this entire scheme had been built around. Tamara walked into the ballroom like fire wrapped in velvet. Her wine-red gown shimmered under chandeliers, her braids piled into a crown. The room stopped breathing. Julian took her hand. Not for the cameras. Just because it felt right. Charlotte approached with her snakeskin smile and her new husband, duller, older, already bored. Her eyes widened when she saw Tamara. "Julian," she purred. "Didn't expect you to bring a guest." Tamara smiled politely. "Funny. We didn't expect you to wear white." Again. The silence cracked. A few chuckles broke from nearby tables. Julian stood taller. Tamara stood unbothered. And Charlotte, for once, had no words. By the end of the evening, Julian found himself watching Tamara laugh with guests, talk business with bankers, and charm the very people who once whispered about her. He realized something unsettling. He wasn't pretending anymore. And that terrified him. The next morning, Tamara was back in her bakery before sunrise. That's how she steadied herself: flour, yeast, heat. The quiet crackle of ovens always drowned out the noise of the world. She tried to push away the memory of last night. The ballroom, Charlotte's stunned silence, Julian's hand pressing into the small of her back like it belonged there. This was supposed to be a performance. A deal. A transaction. But the part that unsettled her most wasn't Charlotte's humiliation. It was the way Julian looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Like she wasn't an act. Like she wasn't a pawn. Like she was real. The bakery door chimed. Kenya walked in, hair still wrapped in a scarf, phone in her hand. She tossed it on the counter. "You need to see this." Tamara frowned. On the screen were photos, old ones. Julian at glittering society parties, his arm around a rotating cast of women. All slim, all blonde, all indistinguishable from Charlotte. Different gowns, same aesthetic. Tamara's chest tightened. Where did these come from? Charlotte. Kenya's jaw was tight. She's spreading them around. Her little way of reminding everyone who Julian really is. Tamara looked at the screen again. The images told a story she didn't want to believe. Julian as a collector of women who looked alike, women who fit. She felt the sting deep inside, harsher than she expected. Because suddenly, a question formed in her throat. Was I just another statement piece? Another revenge prop? Julian arrived minutes later, stepping through the back door with his usual calmness. He carried 2 coffees, just the way she liked hers, strong, with a dash of cinnamon. He froze when he saw the photos on the counter. Tamara. Don't. Her voice cracked sharp across the flour-dusted kitchen. Just tell me the truth. Am I any different? Or am I just the opposite of them, your little rebellion? Julian's jaw tightened. He set the coffee down and stepped closer. Those pictures, those women, none of it was real. It was performance. That world was performance. Just like this arrangement started as performance. She laughed bitterly, even as her throat burned. You're saying this with a straight face? You marry me out of revenge, and then you parade me in front of Charlotte like a trophy. And now I'm supposed to believe I'm different. Julian's hands curled at his sides. He wanted to shout, but his voice came out low, almost pleading. You are different. You're the only person who doesn't want anything from me but honesty. Do you think I'd risk everything, my company, my reputation, for someone who was just another pawn? He stopped himself, breathing hard. This isn't revenge anymore, Tamara. Not for me. The silence between them was unbearable. Tamara looked at him, her chest heaving. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe the warmth in his eyes wasn't another layer of performance. But the betrayal of those photos dug too deep. Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke. You said it yourself. It started as performance. And maybe that's all it ever will be. She pulled off her apron, grabbed her coat, and walked out the back door into the grey London morning. Julian stood there in the bakery kitchen, the scent of fresh bread in the air, the coffee cooling untouched on the counter. For the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't control. Fear. Because the woman he married for revenge had just walked away with his heart. Tamara didn't go home that night. Instead, she found herself walking through streets still slick with rain, past shuttered cafes and glowing late-night pubs, until she reached the river. She leaned against the rail, the cold steel biting her palms, staring at the water as it moved in restless silence. The photos played over and over in her mind. Julian's perfect smiles, his arm draped around women who all looked like copies of Charlotte. The same pattern, the same performance. And now her. Was she different? Or just another act in a long-running play? She hated that it hurt so much. The deal was never about love. She had been clear from the start. No funny business, no romance, no expectations. And yet, here she was, standing on a riverbank at midnight, trembling with a hurt she had no right to feel. When dawn broke, Tamara did the only thing that ever gave her clarity. She went back to the bakery. She tied her apron tight and plunged her hands into dough, kneading hard, every push and fold away to silence her thoughts. By the time the ovens roared to life, sweat dampened her forehead, and her anger had dulled into exhaustion. Kenya arrived just after sunrise, yawning, carrying takeaway tea. She watched her sister pounding dough and shook her head. You can keep pretending it's about the bread, Tam. But I know it's about him. Tamara froze. Don't. Kenya leaned against the counter. I've seen the way he looks at you. Like you're not just part of the plan anymore. Like you're the plan. Tamara laughed bitterly. Kenya, he married me for revenge. And I agreed, for business. You think a man like that forgets why he started? Kenya sipped her tea slowly. Maybe he doesn't forget. Maybe he changes. Across town, Julian sat in his penthouse with a glass of water that tasted like ash. He hadn't slept. Every corner of the flat felt colder without Tamara's presence. Even the guest room door, still ajar, mocked him. On the coffee table lay a folder, the contract they had both signed. Clear terms, black and white. Safety in legal language. A deal with no risk. And yet here he was, unraveling. 4 years, Julian had hidden behind control. Every relationship scripted, every move calculated. But Tamara, she had torn through his armor without even trying. She didn't flatter him. She didn't bend for him. She demanded to be seen as she was. And that terrified him. For the first time in his life, Julian wanted to be chosen not for his name, not for his wealth, not for revenge, but for himself. And if he had to risk everything to prove that to her, he would. That evening, he walked into the bakery without warning. Tamara didn't look up from the counter where she was decorating a tray of cinnamon rolls. If you're here to explain again, don't bother. Julian stepped closer, his voice low. I'm not here to explain. I'm here to tell you what I should have said from the start. She finally met his eyes, guarded. He placed a fresh loaf of bread on the counter, still warm, its crust imperfect. I baked this. I followed your recipe. Burned the first 3. But I kept going until I got it right. Tamara blinked, thrown off balance. Why? Because it's the first real thing I've done in years. And because this, he gestured at the bread, then at her, this isn't revenge anymore. Not for me. I want to build something real. With you. For a moment, the bakery was silent except for the soft hum of the ovens. Tamara's throat tightened. She wanted to dismiss him, to laugh, to protect herself. But the sincerity in his voice cracked something in her. She looked at the bread again. And though she didn't say it out loud, part of her wanted to believe him. The days that followed were quieter, but not easier. Tamara didn't forgive Julian, not yet. Trust wasn't something you handed back like a returned coat. But she allowed him to stay close. He started showing up at the bakery in the mornings, sometimes before the ovens even warmed, carrying strong coffee exactly how she liked it. He would roll up his sleeves, dust his expensive trousers with flour, and help shape loaves. His hands were clumsy, but his persistence amused her. It was the first time she saw him stripped of his polished veneer, awkward, determined, human. Kenya noticed, too. She caught her sister watching Julian one morning and smirked. "Careful, Tam. You keep letting him in here, he might start to feel like family." Tamara swatted her with a tea towel, but her chest tightened. Family. The word terrified her more than love. Still, business pressed forward. Julian unveiled his expansion plans for sweet success, 3 new locations across London. Not just shops, community hubs with teaching kitchens, apprenticeships, and scholarships. Tamara's dream, written in blueprints and spreadsheets. "This isn't about empire," Julian told her one evening as they reviewed plans in the bakery office. "This is about legacy. Yours." She looked at him then, really looked, and saw something she hadn't before. A man who wasn't just trying to win. A man who was trying to change. But just as trust began to take root, the past came knocking. Charlotte. She arrived at the bakery uninvited, her heels clicking against the tiles like gunshots. The bell above the door chimed, but her presence swallowed the air before the sound faded. Customers whispered. Kenya stiffened behind the counter. Tamara stepped out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, every muscle in her body braced. Charlotte's smile was razor-sharp. "Quite the empire you're building," she drawled. "But empires can crumble if the foundation is false." Julian appeared from the back, his expression darkening. "Charlotte, leave." She ignored him, placing a sleek folder on the counter. "You might want to reconsider that. Inside are documents proving your marriage was a business arrangement. Dates, contracts, witnesses. If I wanted, I could have this all over the society pages by morning." The room went still. Tamara's face flushed hot, shame flooding her. Customers shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to listen, but every ear strained for the fallout. Julian's jaw clenched. "Blackmail? That's beneath you." Charlotte's eyes glittered. "Don't flatter me. I'm not here for money. I want in. On your little project. This foundation you're launching, culinary education, community kitchens. I want a seat at the table. Call it penance." Tamara's voice was steady, though her hands trembled at her sides. "Why?" "So you can polish your image while the rest of us do the work." For the first time, Charlotte's smile faltered. A crack in the armor. "Because," she hesitated, then exhaled. "Because I've been watching. And for the first time, I see what I missed. You're building something real, Tamara. And I want to be part of it. Not for me. For once, for something that matters." The bakery was silent except for the hum of the ovens. Julian looked at Tamara, waiting. The choice wasn't his, it was hers. Tamara's chest ached. Everything in her wanted to say no, to protect what she had fought so hard to build. But another voice whispered, "Control the story before someone else twists it." Finally, she spoke. "You want in? Fine. But on our terms. Advisory only. No decisions. You raise the money, we do the work. And the world hears the truth, from us, not you." Charlotte studied her, then nodded slowly. "Deal." That night, when the bakery lights dimmed and the city outside hushed, Tamara sat alone in her office. She should have felt victorious. But instead, her heart thudded with unease. Julian entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. He set one beside her and sat across from her. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. "I did," Tamara replied. "Because I won't let anyone else define my story again." Their eyes held, the air thick with something unspoken. And for the first time, Tamara let herself wonder, was this still business, or was it finally something more? The bakery garden glowed under strings of warm lights. What had once been a patch of cracked concrete was now transformed, flowers in bloom, wooden tables draped with linen, neighbors mingling with society figures, laughter threading through the air. It wasn't a ballroom, it wasn't the Ritz. But it was theirs. Tamara stood in the back room, smoothing down the lace of her ivory dress. Kenya fastened the clasp of her necklace, whispering, "This time, it's not about business. It's about you." Out in the garden, Julian waited beneath an arch of roses. His heart raced. He had faced investors, rivals, and scandals without flinching, but waiting for Tamara now, this terrified him. Because there was no contract to protect him, no deal to shield him. There was only love. The music shifted. Guests rose. And then Tamara appeared, her father on her arm, her smile soft and certain. Julian forgot how to breathe. When she reached him, they joined hands. Their vows were simple, unpolished, yet perfect. "Julian," Tamara said, her voice strong. "What began as revenge became my chance to rebuild. You saw me, when so many chose not to. I promised to love you, to challenge you, and to never apologize for being exactly who I am." Julian's voice broke as he spoke. "Tamara, you turned my world upside down. You showed me what it means to be real. I promised to love you not for how you helped me stand against others, but for how you helped me stand for myself." Applause rippled as they sealed their vows with a kiss, gentle at first, then certain, as if releasing every ghost of the past. The reception that followed was unlike anything London high society had ever seen. Society matrons sat beside local families, apprentices served food they baked themselves, children ran between tables with icing on their cheeks. Even Charlotte mingled, no longer a rival, but a cautious ally, quietly steering donors toward the foundation jar. Later that night, long after the last guest had left, Julian and Tamara stood in the quiet bakery kitchen. The counters were dusted with flour, the scent of sugar still heavy in the air. Tamara leaned her head against his shoulder. "We built this," she whispered. Julian wrapped his arm around her. "Not just a business. A life. A family." She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "The sweetest success." And for the first time, Julian believed it, not the kind of success measured in numbers or headlines, but in love earned the hard way, through scars, through forgiveness, through truth. As the ovens cooled and the city outside slept, they knew, what began as revenge had ended in redemption. And that, after everything, was enough. Stories like this remind us that sometimes revenge opens the door to redemption, and love shows up where we least expect it. Hit that like button if you felt the twist in your heart, share this video with someone who believes in second chances, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next story. Here's a question I'd love for you to answer in the comments. Do you believe a relationship that starts for the wrong reasons, like pride or revenge, can ever grow into something real and lasting? I can't wait to hear your thoughts.